My name is Mana Coleman. I'm 27 years old, and I have spent most of my life learning the art of being invisible, not because I wanted to be, but because my family made it clear that I was background noise in the story of their golden children. It all came to a head on my birthday, 5 years in a row. Imagine this. You come home from a long double shift, exhausted, dreaming of at least a little love from your family, and instead, you sit down alone at your kitchen table, staring at a single store-bought cupcake, with one candle jammed into the middle. That's it. No call, no text, no card. But the worst part isn't the silence. It's knowing that while I'm sitting there alone, my parents are probably on the phone with my brother Sebastian, planning his next big bash. Last year, his birthday gift was a brand new BMW, red bow and all. The year before that, a party at the country club with 30 of his closest friends. Champagne, live music, professional photography, the works. My younger sister Olivia, the baby of the family, got her own kind of spotlight. For her last birthday, my parents handed her a $15,000 check to fund her catering business, along with a weekend spa retreat. They called it her pre-business stress relief package. And me? I got Nancy's distracted voice on the phone. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. We've just been so busy with Sebastian's promotion and helping Olivia get her catering business off the ground. You know how it is." Yes, Mom. I did know how it was. I tried to swallow the bitterness, to tell myself I was fine. But the truth, every forgotten candle, every brushed off birthday, every time I watched my siblings celebrated while I faded into the wallpaper, it carved something deep inside me. A wound, a hunger, a need to prove I wasn't invisible. Growing up in the Coleman family meant one thing. Love came with conditions, and apparently I didn't meet them. My father, William, was a sharp, successful accountant in downtown Charleston. My mother, Nancy, a real estate agent selling high-end homes to the city's wealthy elite. They weren't cruel, they weren't abusive, but they were selective. Their love was a prize you earned, not something you were given. And Sebastian? He earned it effortlessly. Tall, charming, naturally talented. The kind of man who walked into a room and everyone turned to listen. He wanted to play tennis. They hired a private coach. He wanted an MBA. They paid for the best university. He wanted a new car. Keys were in his hand before he could ask twice. Olivia was a different story. The artistic, sensitive one, the dreamer, and they adored her for it. Paid for her culinary school, supported her internships, gave her seed money to start her own business. Then there was me, the middle child, the one who learned to bake her own birthday cakes by 12, who worked part-time jobs just to buy her own clothes. When I graduated dental hygiene school, I got a card with $20 and a quick, "Congratulations." That was it. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But what they didn't realize was that in overlooking me, they were teaching me something my siblings would never learn: how to stand on my own. For the last 3 years, while they laughed at my little dental job and assumed I was scraping by, I had been building something. Nights, weekends, stolen hours, in between shifts. A bookkeeping business for small companies. Word spread fast because I was good, reliable, precise, discreet. By the time I turned 27, I wasn't just dabbling. I was running the finances for 12 businesses, pulling in a second income that went straight into savings and investments. But my family never asked about my life, never asked if I needed help or if I was working on something important. They didn't care. And in a twisted way, that was fine. Because while they ignored me, I was building a foundation they couldn't even imagine. Still, the night of that 5th forgotten birthday, sitting in the quiet with my cupcake, I felt something break. This wasn't just about birthdays anymore. It was about dignity, about the way they looked at me, and more importantly, the way they didn't. I whispered into the phone, "You forgot again, didn't you?" And when my mom sighed and promised like always, "We'll make it up to you next weekend," I knew. Next weekend would come and go with nothing, just like always. But that night, as I blew out the candle alone, I made a vow. The next time they looked at me, they wouldn't see the forgotten daughter. They'd see someone they should never have underestimated. The breaking point didn't arrive with a thunderclap. It didn't arrive in some dramatic shouting match across the dinner table or an explosive family meltdown. No, it came quietly, the way betrayal often does, sneaking in under the skin until you realize the damage is already done. It was a Tuesday afternoon, humid and heavy, the kind of South Carolina heat that makes the air feel thick enough to choke. I had just finished my last dental appointment for the day and was walking toward the staff parking lot, already picturing myself sinking into the driver's seat of my silver Toyota Corolla. My little car wasn't much to look at, but it was mine. Every payment, every oil change, every mile. It was the one thing in my life I had bought and maintained completely on my own. Only, when I got there, the space was empty. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. I walked up and down the lot twice, my tote bag cutting into my shoulder, sweat prickling down my neck. My keys were in my hand, clenched so tight the metal dug into my palm. But no matter how many times I pressed the button, no reassuring beep beep answered me back. I called the front desk. "Hey, did you see anyone towing a Corolla out of the lot?" The receptionist sounded confused. "Nope, nothing like that. You sure you parked here this morning?" "Yes," I said, sharper than I meant to. "I'm sure." That's when I noticed the folded piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper of the SUV parked in the space next to mine. For some reason, my gut told me it was connected. I pulled it out with shaky hands. "Thanks for helping the family out, sweetheart. Olivia needed the car more than you. Don't make a fuss. Love, Mom." I stood there, the words burning into my skull. My car, gone. Not stolen by strangers, not repossessed. Taken by my own parents. For Olivia, the heat didn't matter anymore. I felt cold. My knees wobbled as though the ground itself was tilting. I wanted to believe it was a sick joke, but the neat handwriting and the little heart my mother always doodled at the end of her notes told me it wasn't. I called her immediately. It rang twice before she picked up, sounding cheerful, distracted, like she was balancing her phone between her cheek and shoulder while painting her nails. "Oh, Mana. Hi, honey. Everything okay? Where's my car?" My voice cracked on. The word. There was a pause, then a sigh. "Don't sound so dramatic. We only signed it over to Olivia temporarily. She needs it to make catering deliveries. You don't really use it, do you? I mean, you work so close to home." My grip tightened around the phone. "Don't use it. That car is mine, Mom. I paid for every cent of it, and I drive it every single day. How could you even..." "Now, don't get upset," she interrupted, the way she always did when she wanted to shut me down. "You can borrow your dad's truck when you need to. Olivia's business is important right now. It's her dream. Don't you want to support your sister?" There it was. The familiar script. The golden child's dream was always more important than my reality. "I want to support her," I whispered, my throat tight, "but not by sacrificing the one thing I own." Mom clicked her tongue. "You're overreacting. We'll figure something out. Anyway, I've got to run. Olivia's expecting me at the tasting. Be good, sweetheart." And she hung up. The walk home took 40 minutes. Every step pounded the rage deeper into my chest. By the time I made it back to my apartment, sweat dripping down my back, I wasn't just angry. I was humiliated. Neighbors saw me trudging down the sidewalk, keys in hand, no car in sight. I could practically hear their thoughts. Did her car break down? Did it get repossessed? Poor girl. Poor girl. That was the story of my life. When I finally collapsed onto my couch, I stared at the ceiling, my body shaking. I couldn't stop replaying the phone call. My mother's dismissive tone, her complete lack of shame. It wasn't just that they had taken my car. It was that they had taken it without even asking, as if my needs didn't exist, as if my hard work meant nothing. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Olivia sliding behind the wheel of my Corolla, grinning, telling her friends, "Oh, my parents gave me this. They're just the best." And my parents would nod proudly, playing the generous benefactors, while I stood somewhere in the shadows, invisible, again. But something shifted in me that night. The humiliation burned away into something sharper, something colder. For the first time in my life, I stopped making excuses for them. Stopped telling myself, they'll notice me eventually. They'll care someday. They wouldn't. They had shown me, again and again, exactly where I stood in their world. So maybe it was time I showed them where they stood in mine. 2 weeks later, I got invited to a family dinner. It wasn't unusual. They hosted big dinners almost every month, usually to celebrate something Sebastian or Olivia had accomplished. This time, it was Olivia's catering business taking off. She had landed a contract for a wedding, and my parents couldn't stop gushing. I didn't want to go, but something inside me whispered that I needed to. I needed to look them in the eye, to see how far they would go in pretending I didn't matter. So I went. The moment I walked in, Olivia was already the star. She stood in the living room, holding court with a glass of wine, her voice animated as she described her client base. My parents hovered nearby, faces glowing with pride. "Oh, Mana," Mom said, barely glancing at me as I slipped off my shoes. "Isn't it wonderful? Olivia's really doing it." I forced a smile. "Yeah, congratulations, Olivia." She barely looked at me. "Thanks. Oh, and by the way, the Corolla's great, perfect size for loading trays. I don't know how you managed without it all these years." The room laughed. My father chuckled, clapping her on the shoulder. And in that moment, I realized they weren't just dismissing me. They were mocking me. I sat through that dinner in silence, pushing food around my plate, listening to the endless praise showered on Olivia. Not once did anyone ask how I was doing. Not once did they ask about my work, my life, my business. I might as well have been a piece of furniture. But while they laughed and toasted and cheered, I was studying them, watching, memorizing every word, every smirk, every self-satisfied glance. Because when the time came, I wanted to remember exactly how they looked before I turned their little world upside down. On the drive home, borrowing my dad's old truck, which reeked of cigarettes and stale coffee, I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight for scraps anymore. I wasn't going to beg for their attention or hope for their approval. If they wanted to treat me like I was nothing, then fine, let them. But I would build a life so big, so unshakable, that they couldn't ignore me anymore. And when the time was right, I would make sure they understood exactly what they had lost. Not just a daughter, not just a sister, but the one person in their family who had been strong enough to stand alone. And that realization, that icy, thrilling clarity, was the true breaking point. From that night on, I stopped being the invisible girl. I became something else, something sharper, something they would never see coming. The funny thing about invisibility is that once you stop resenting it, you realize it can be a weapon. For years I had cried over being overlooked. I wanted so badly to be seen, to be acknowledged, But after that family dinner, after the Corolla incident, I understood something important. Their blindness gave me freedom. They weren't watching me. They weren't checking up on me. They weren't even curious. That meant I could move in silence. And silence is powerful. By day, I was still Mana, the quiet dental hygienist who cleaned teeth, smiled politely, and walked home when her car was stolen. To my co-workers, I was reliable, maybe a little boring. To my family, I was background, noise. But at night, I became something else. My side business had started small. Just helping a friend of a friend with bookkeeping when her small cafe got audited. I was good with numbers, always had been. I liked the clean, logical way they worked. No favoritism, no bias. 2 plus 2 was always 4. Word spread. Soon I was managing accounts for a landscaping company, then a boutique, then a construction, startup. Before long, I was logging 12 clients into my spreadsheets, their financial lives unfolding beneath my fingers. I didn't flaunt it. I didn't post about it. I didn't even tell my closest friend. Every dollar I made went into a separate account, carefully invested, quietly growing. Meanwhile, my parents still pitied me for struggling with rent. They had no idea I had built a cushion big enough to buy a small condo outright if I wanted to. The invisibility worked in my favor. They never asked where I was when I skipped family events. They assumed I was working late, and I was, just not in the way they thought. Money sitting still is useless. I knew that, so I started learning. I devoured books, watched online, lectures, stalked financial forums at midnight while sipping cheap coffee. Real estate, stocks, bonds. The markets intimidated me at first, but the more I studied, the clearer it became. The wealthy weren't smarter, just better informed. So I informed myself. When the housing market dipped, I scraped together a down payment and bought a 2-bedroom condo on the edge of Charleston. I fixed it up, rented it out, and within a year it was cash flowing steadily. That rent went straight into my investment fund. When tech stocks surged, I rode the wave. When a local bakery went up for sale, I quietly bought a stake. Each move was calculated, small but steady. And every time I signed a contract or deposited a rent check, I felt the chains my family had wrapped around me get a little looser. It wasn't just money. I started changing in ways they couldn't see. I upgraded my wardrobe. Not flashy, just sharp. Blazers that fit perfectly. Heels that clicked with confidence. I joined a professional networking group downtown, sipping cocktails with entrepreneurs who treated me like an equal. I even started therapy. For the first time, I unpacked the years of neglect, the ache of being invisible. My therapist looked me in the eye and said, "You don't need their validation. You're already enough." I cried harder than I'd ever cried in my life. Slowly, I stopped flinching every time my phone lit up with my mom's name. I stopped longing for a happy birthday that would never come. Instead, I poured my energy into building something that was mine alone. By 29, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. My bookkeeping firm had grown so much. I left the dental office for good. I had 3 condos, 2 stocks portfolios, and a savings account that would make my brother's BMW look like a toy. And yet to my family, I was still poor Mana, the daughter they forgot to call, the sister who didn't quite measure up. There were moments when my resolve was tested, like when my parents called and asked me to co-sign a loan for Sebastian. "Just a formality," they said. "He's buying his second car, and it'll be good for your credit to help him out." I laughed bitterly after I hung up. They had no idea my credit score was pristine, my accounts overflowing. They thought they were doing me a favor by letting me tag along on my brother's success. Then came Olivia's plea. She called late one night, her voice syrupy. Mana, you're so good with numbers. Could you help me manage the books for my catering business? Just until I get the hang of it. I could have laughed in her face. After all, she was running her dream on my car. But instead, I smiled into the phone. Of course, Olivia, I said sweetly. Send me everything. And she did. That was the night I realized how much power I actually had. With a few keystrokes, I saw everything. Her profits, her debts, her overspending. I didn't sabotage her, not yet. But I tucked the knowledge away, quietly, patiently, because revenge wasn't about lashing out in anger. It was about precision. The turning point came on my 30th birthday. I didn't expect anything, of course. By now, the silence had become routine. But that day, after work, I unlocked the door to my apartment and froze. On the table sat a cake, a real one, not a cupcake, 3 layers, frosted neatly, with Happy Birthday Mana written in blue letters. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I set down my bag. Was it possible? Had they remembered? Then I saw the note. It wasn't from them. It was from my tenants, the young couple who rented my first condo. They'd remembered because I'd mentioned it once in passing when signing paperwork. They'd baked me a cake out of gratitude for being the best landlord we've ever had. I laughed and cried at the same time, sitting there on the floor of my kitchen. That was when it hit me. I didn't need my family's recognition. I already had it from people who saw me, truly saw me, without blood ties or obligations. I didn't need to wait for my parents or siblings to change. I needed to change what I gave them access to. So I began pulling back. I stopped answering calls right away, stopped rushing to family dinners where I was ignored. When my mom complained, "We never see you anymore," I simply smiled. I've been busy indeed, busy building an empire they didn't even know existed. Meanwhile, my parents started to struggle. The real estate market dipped, and Mom's commissions slowed. Dad's accounting firm lost a major client. They never said it outright, but I could hear the stress in their voices, the way their cheerful chatter turned into sharp arguments in the background of phone calls. And Olivia's catering business, it was bleeding money. The Corolla was breaking, down from constant use. Her credit cards maxed. Her big client contracts barely covering costs. For the first time in my life, my family needed help. And for the first time, I had the power to decide what that help would look like. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, dressed in a sleek navy dress I'd bought with my own money. My hair was perfect, my lipstick bold, and I thought, they don't even know who I am anymore. That thought thrilled me, because if they didn't know who I was, they wouldn't see it coming. The plan wasn't simple revenge. It wasn't about yelling or demanding apologies. It was about showing them, through actions, through undeniable proof, that the daughter they dismissed had become the one person they couldn't afford to ignore. They had taken my car. They had taken my birthdays. They had taken my dignity for years. Now I was going to take something back, and the best part, they would hand it to me themselves. Revenge isn't about fire and fury. It's about control. And by the time I reached 30, I had more control than my family could even imagine. The beauty of being underestimated is that people hand you opportunities they would never give someone they respected. My parents thought I was weak. My siblings thought I was irrelevant. That blindness gave me the perfect stage. The first move was subtle. I sent out invitations for a small celebration dinner at one of Charleston's nicest rooftop restaurants, the kind of place with linen tablecloths and panoramic views of the harbor. I told them it was to celebrate a personal milestone. My mother sounded skeptical on the phone. A milestone? What milestone, honey? You'll see, I said simply. I could practically hear her frown. She was probably imagining some pitiful attempt at a promotion, or maybe a new certification, at the dental office. The thought that I might have outpaced her precious Sebastian, or Olivia, wouldn't even cross her mind, and that was exactly what I wanted. The night of the dinner, I arrived early. My dress was emerald green silk, tailored, perfectly, paired with gold earrings that caught the light. When I caught my reflection in the mirror behind the bar, even I had to pause. This wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. One by one, they arrived. Sebastian in his designer blazer, Olivia in a flowy pastel dress, my parents looking slightly tired, but still polished. They kissed cheeks, air hugged, chatted about traffic and work. Then they looked at me, and for the first time in years, they hesitated. Wow, Mana, my father said slowly. You look different. Successful, Olivia added with a little laugh, though I saw the flicker of discomfort in her eyes. We sat. The waiter poured wine. Conversation started predictably. Sebastian bragging about his new investment property. Olivia moaning about flaky clients. My parents nodded along, glowing with parental pride. Finally, my mother turned to me. So, Mana, what's this milestone of yours? I set down my glass. My hands were steady, my voice calm. Well, I wanted to let you all know that I've officially retired from dental work. My bookkeeping firm has grown beyond what I could handle alone. We manage finances for over 40 businesses now. Forks clinked against plates. Silence. I continued. I also bought a new condo downtown, paid in cash, and I'll be closing on a lake house next month. Oh, and I just purchased a new car. Their faces were priceless. My father blinked rapidly. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Olivia's smile faltered. I let the silence stretch before leaning back in my chair. It feels good, finally doing everything on my own. That was the first blow. Not loud, not cruel, just undeniable truth laid bare. Of course they didn't congratulate me. Not really. My mom forced a smile. That's wonderful, sweetheart. We had no idea you were doing so well. No, I said evenly. You didn't. Then came the predictable pivot. Within minutes, the conversation turned, not to my success, but to their struggles. Dad sighed about the market. Mom hinted about a slow season. Olivia twirled her wine glass and murmured about cash flow issues. Finally, Sebastian leaned forward. Mana, maybe you could, I don't know, help us out a little. Just short term. You've got all this extra income now, right? There it was. The hand, reaching out as if I hadn't been invisible for decades. I smiled sweetly. Of course I'll help. In fact, I already have something in mind. They all looked relieved, even grateful. But if they'd noticed the glint in my eye, they might have realized the help I had in mind wasn't charity. I started with Olivia. She sent me her catering accounts, expecting me to fix them, and I did, but not in the way she thought. I showed her exactly where she was bleeding money, where she'd overextended, how her debts were stacked against her, without major changes. I told her calmly, "You'll be bankrupt within 6 months." She paled. "Can't you just move things around, make it look better?" I shook my head. No amount of creative bookkeeping can fix bad business practices. But don't worry, I'll make you an offer. Sell me 49% of your business. I'll inject capital, clean up the books, and you'll stay afloat, she sputtered. Sell you half my business? To my sister. 49%, I corrected. I don't even want majority control. Just enough to ensure I'm not throwing money into a fire, she balked. But when the creditors started circling, she signed the papers. And just like that, her business wasn't really hers anymore. It was ours, mine. He'd over-leveraged himself, buying that second investment property with barely any down payment. He bragged about being a landlord, but his tenants were months behind on rent, and the mortgage company was circling. When he came to me for advice, I didn't gloat. I simply handed him an offer. "I'll buy the property outright," I said, "at a fair price. You'll clear your debts and walk away with some cash in hand. Or you can wait until the bank forecloses and walk away with nothing." His face turned red. "You're trying to steal it from me." I leaned in. "No, Sebastian. I'm trying to save you from your own stupidity." He hated me for it, but he took the deal, and then came my parents. They didn't ask outright. Pride kept them from admitting how badly they were struggling. But I saw it. The stress lines, the late night calls, the way they sold their vacation timeshare quietly. So I made the first move. Over dinner one night, I said casually, "I'm thinking of buying a bigger house, something with space for guests, maybe one with a garden. Mum could finally design the way she's always wanted." Her eyes lit up despite herself. "And maybe Dad could use the study, a proper one, not the cramped office you have now." They tried to hide it, but I could see the temptation, the idea of living in comfort again, funded not by their own dwindling accounts, but by the daughter they'd ignored. I didn't push. I simply let the idea take root. 2 months later, they moved into my new lake house. Officially, they were helping me manage the property. In reality, they were living under my roof, eating my food, relying on my income. The irony was delicious. By the end of that year, the balance of power had shifted completely. Olivia's business had my name on the paperwork. Sebastian's investment was in my portfolio. My parents were tenants in a house I owned outright. Every time they looked at me, they saw the daughter they had dismissed, the daughter now holding the strings of their survival. But I wasn't cruel. I didn't throw it in their faces. Instead, I smiled. I supported. I let them bask in the illusion that they were still in control, because the real sting wasn't in the loss of money or status. It was in the quiet realization, late at night, that the person they had ignored had become the one they couldn't live without. It came on my 31st birthday. This time, I hosted a party at the lake house. Catered, decorated, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Friends, colleagues, tenants, even a few clients came. The house was alive with celebration. My family stood awkwardly in the corner, watching as dozens of people toasted me, hugged me, praised me. For once, I was the star. At the end of the night, I raised my glass. I just want to thank everyone here for supporting me, for believing in me, for reminding me that family isn't just the people you're born to. It's the people who see you, who value you, who celebrate you. My words hung in the air. My guests cheered, and my family, my parents, my siblings, looked at me with faces pale as ghosts. That was the final stroke of revenge, not anger, not screaming, just the undeniable truth. I had built a life without them, and now they lived in mine, not the other way around. Revenge stories usually end with fireworks, someone screaming, someone slamming doors. A dramatic, "I told you so," but the truth is quieter, heavier. It seeps in slowly, like water through cracks in stone. And for my family, the aftermath of my revenge wasn't one loud explosion. It was a series of small, suffocating realizations. The lake house became their gilded cage. At first, my mum loved it. She walked through the gardens every morning, trimming flowers, humming to herself, like she was living in one of those glossy magazine spreads. My dad settled into the study, Surrounded by the mahogany shelves I had filled with books. Next was Sebastian. They told themselves they were helping me manage the property. That's how they explained it to their friends. But those friends stopped visiting. Pride kept them from admitting the truth. They were living in their daughter's house because they couldn't afford their own. Every so often, I'd catch my mom looking at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. There was a sadness in her eyes, almost guilt, but she never apologized. Neither did my dad. They weren't built that way. Instead, they compensated with politeness. Too much politeness. Thank you for dinner, sweetheart. Lovely house, darling. We're so grateful, really. Words that never once left their mouths when I was a child. And that was the sting. Not that they depended on me now, but that they finally realized, too late, that I had been worth seeing all along. Owning nearly half of her business changed everything. She still showed up at events, plastered on that social butterfly smile, pretended everything was under control, but her friends whispered. They knew. Word spreads fast in a small city, and everyone eventually learned that her little sister was propping her up. She hated it. The first few months, she fought me on every decision. She called my ideas too rigid, my standards unrealistic. But every time I showed her the numbers, the profit margins improving, the debts shrinking, she had to swallow her pride. By the end of the year, she stopped arguing. Sometimes, I'd catch her staring at me across the office, like she didn't recognize me. The little sister who used to trail behind her in hand-me-down dresses was now signing off on her paychecks. One night, after a particularly successful event, she lingered in the empty hall as the caterers cleaned up. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. You really saved me, you know. I looked at her. Did I? She bit her lip, then gave a bitter little laugh. No, you bought me, and I sold myself. She wasn't wrong. Sebastian took the hardest fall. The day he handed me the keys to his investment property, I saw something crack in him. He'd spent his whole life puffed up, convinced he was the golden son, and in a single transaction, that image shattered. He tried to rebuild, of course, talked big about new ventures, networking opportunities, something in the works, but the truth was clear. Without leverage, without cash, he was just another 30-something trying to claw his way back. One afternoon, months later, he showed up at my office. He didn't knock, just walked in, shoulders slumped. I need a job, he muttered. I looked up from my desk. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. What can you do for me, Sebastian? I asked. He didn't answer, because he knew the truth. He had nothing I needed. He left without another word, and that was worse than any argument. Silence is the heaviest defeat. Charleston is a small city with a long memory. People talk. Soon, the whispers spread about the daughter who outshone her siblings, about the parents living in her house, about the golden children who weren't so golden after all. I didn't spread those stories. I didn't need to. They grew on their own, fed by curiosity and gossip. Every time someone raised an eyebrow at my family, every time someone asked just a little too sweetly how they were managing, my revenge deepened, because humiliation doesn't need a stage. It thrives in whispers. Here's the truth they'll never know. I didn't do it to destroy them. I did it to survive them. For years, I tried to earn their love. I bent myself into shapes, shrank into corners, worked twice as hard for half the recognition, and it never mattered. But once I stopped chasing their approval, once I built my own world, I realized something. Revenge wasn't about making them suffer. It was about making them watch, making them sit at my table, in my house, under my roof, and know that they no longer defined me. I thought I'd feel triumphant, like I'd finally won. But what I felt was quieter, steadier, like closing a book I'd been carrying for too long. They had written me out of the family story, so I wrote my own. Sometimes late at night, I stand on the balcony of the lake house, looking out over the water. The moonlight ripples across the surface, calm and endless. Behind me, the house hums with the life I built, the hum of appliances I paid for, the laughter of friends who truly see me, the quiet presence of parents who finally belatedly realize my worth. Do I forgive them? Not entirely. Some wounds don't close, but I no longer need their apology, because the greatest revenge wasn't in taking their businesses, their pride, their comfort. It was in proving, without a single scream, that I never needed them to become whole. And that, I think, is what they'll regret most. Not that they lost, but that they never really knew me until it was too late.